Okay, good morning. It's a little bit after 9 a.m. on Thursday, February the 24th. And I wanted to kick off a new task force we have, which is the City of Isle of Palms Accommodations Task Force, looking at our ATAX dollars. And I want to welcome everybody, and I want to acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of this meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. So with that, what I'd like to do first is read a letter into the record that each of our task force participants received from Mayor Philip Pounds. And let me do that first before we get into some introductions here. The letter is from Mayor Pounds, and it just says to each of us, I just wanted to thank you for your willingness to participate in our task force. I appreciate you taking the time to help us with this important initiative. I know you're busy and your time is valuable, so we will be respectful of that and move the process along. All I'm asking of each task force member is willingness to be open-minded, hear all the facts, understand what is allowed by state law, and then make the best decision for the residents and businesses on Isle of Palms. I know this task force will be better by having you on it. Thank you again, and let me know how I can help. So that's from Mayor Pounds to each of us, and we certainly appreciate that acknowledgement from him. What I'd first like to do is, let everybody know that we have selected 9 people to be on the task force, and I'm going to ask each of you to do a brief introduction of yourself also. And I will begin, and this will be a sort of a brief introduction, but I'm Rusty Streetman, and I'm on City Council, have been for about 2 years now. I'm a 38-year resident of Isle of Palms, moved here in early '84, so I think that's 38. And have a wife, 2 daughters, a grandson, and I decided a couple of years ago to serve the community by running for City Council, and I got a seat. So I'm on here and happy to do so. Kind of my goal on this is to basically move this process along. We want to be thorough. We want to be collegial. We want to have a lot of information that we share and with each other. And but I do think that since we've been given a 6-month timeline to get back to City Council with recommendations, that will behoove us to really make sure that we have a lot of energy in this whole meeting process and share ideas and really come up with some good recommendations that we can take back to City Council. I also want to acknowledge that we are very thankful for our ATAX committee that serves this island and for the recommendations they came to City Council with. And of course, today, as part of this agenda, there will be an update from the chairman of ATAX, Mr. Ray Burns, who is part of this committee as well. So that's my intro, and I guess what I'll do is just start to my right, and let's go around the room.
Hello, my name is Katrina Limbach. I'm a resident of the Isle of Palms. I've been a resident since 2010. I own the Isle of Palms Beach Chair Company, and I'm the founding president of the newly formed Isle of Palms Chamber of Commerce. I'm extremely excited to be on this task force, and I really appreciate being appointed by City Council. This is really important to me as a resident and a business owner to help aid in where our ATAX funds go. It's very important. It's a lot of money, and it should be taken very seriously. Thank you for having me along.
Well, I'm Randy Walker. I've lived on the Isle of Palms for many years, raised 2 middle-aged children now back at Wild Dunes on Dune Ridge Lane. I lived downtown for 15 years. I live on James Island now. I own Dunes Properties. We have an office, a Folly Beach office that does vacation rentals. Of course, our Isle of Palms office does that. We have an office at Bohica Marina, real estate only. One downtown on Fulton Street, real estate only, and in Mount Plaza. It's our 32-year history, and I'm very, very interested in the money that's allocated to the CVB, and that's why I'm sitting here, and I'm honored to be on this committee task force.
Yeah, I know you're not part of the
Let's go
task force, but for those who don't know us.
Yeah, I should have. I should have acknowledged that we have some very important members of our city staff here also. So they're going to introduce themselves as well.
My name is Nicole Payne. I'm the city clerk. I will be taking minutes for all of you. I'm very thankful to Amy for putting the name tags out because it's taken a while to get the names associated with so many people. And I think every so often you probably just hear from me to ask you to be closer to the microphone so that we can accurately pick it up on YouTube and on the recording. And please feel free at any time, should you have concerns about the minutes, to reach out to me. I'm happy to take your corrections and have this in. Thank you.
I'm Douglas Carr, I'm the Director of Planning and Building and the Deputy City Administrator. Historically, my work's been planning and zoning, licensing, and accommodations tax law, and the kind of ins and outs of this committee will be new to me as well, so I'll be kind of learning with you about all that has to go on with accommodations tax.
I'm Desiree. Most of you all know me. I've been with the city since 2015, as the city administrator since 2018. Very happy to facilitate this process and facilitate the work that the task force is going to be undertaken. Very excited about the group that was put together. Certainly looking forward to a forward-looking attitude and approach to ATAX. Any information, I know that at the end of the meeting, we're going to have an opportunity to hear from you for questions and what kind of information you need. We'll be happy to facilitate that and provide as much information as you all need to make sure that you're fully informed before you make any recommendations. So happy to be here and excited to help you all.
Thank you, Desiree. Sam?
Hey, good morning, Sam Harris. I work with Low Enterprises Real Estate Group. We're the managing partner of the resort assets out of Wild Beach Resort. A little bit about me. Born and raised in Mount Pleasant, graduate of the College of Charleston. I was a double major in hospitality and tourism management and finance. I worked for several hotel operating companies after I graduated college, one of which was for Destination Hotels, working out at Wild Beach Resort, working with large groups and managing the room blocks. I've been with Lowe for about 4 years now, and I've been involved in roughly $300 million of transaction volume since my time there. And we are very interested in how the tax dollars are the accommodations tax dollars are being spent. We want to make sure that they're being spent wisely because it's a large part of our business. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Vega. I was born and raised in the Low Country and have been an Isle of Palms resident since 2018. My professional background is in marketing and communications for nonprofit organizations, and I am also pursuing an MPA, a Master's of Public Administration at the College of Charleston. We have 2 kids, ages 9 and almost 6, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring a resident perspective to the task force.
My name is Ray Burns. We've owned property here in Isle of Palms for about 20 years. Lived here full time for the past 8 years. Previous to that, we lived in Greenville, South Carolina for 24 years. I ran a manufacturing business up there with a couple of plants in North and South Carolina. That was what my career was about. And like they say, I'm the chairman of the Isle of Palms ATAX Advisory Committee.
Rick?
Brett Jones, I'm co-owner of the Dinghy, Smugglers, Poppies, and recently Luke and Ollie's. Been out here for 18 years, started the Dinghy in 2014, and we just kept going. And my wife says if I get any more, we're getting divorced. So done with that. We have 2 kids, a 9-year-old girl and a 5-year-old girl. I'm happy to be on the task force.
Thank you so much. But just a moment, Curtis. Melissa Simbana could not make it today. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
She received the packet, has been reviewing it, and it's certainly eager to participate at the next meeting.
Right. And she's a representative from the Palms Hotel and Seaside Inn.
That's correct.
General manager of that facility or those facilities. Okay, Curtis, sorry.
I'm Curtis Kay. I came in with Hurricane Hugo in '89, and coming from California, from San Francisco, at that time, this island was a great deal. Everything was relatively cheap. So we bought some Front Beach properties and they've been involved in rental houses on the Front Beach. And then since then, we've kind of expanded to short-term rentals in downtown Charleston. And I've always been, we live in Aspen during the summer, so I'm not here in the summer. But I've always heard about the complaints of the parking. And I've always been kind of curious, where does all this money go? It doesn't seem like much has changed over the years. So it's kind of a learning experience for me. I appreciate being on this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. All right, I think that's all the introductions. Now, one other thing before I turn this over to Desiree for a presentation. Just want to remind everybody that we do have a purpose for this task force, and that is to research, evaluate, and develop a go-forward business model with specific recommendations for the expenditure of accommodations tax revenue specific to tourism advertisement and promotion. That's what our purpose is. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the task force will have up to 6 months to research and come back with specific recommendations to City Council. And I'm hoping that we can do it in a much shorter time frame than that. But we won't rush the process. But I think if we really stay focused on what our goal and our purpose is, that we can certainly come in, well under that goal there. So that is the purpose of the task force. And with that, I will turn things over to Desiree.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Streetman. I do realize that this is going to be a lot of information and you're all going to feel like you're drinking out of a firehouse. So I'm going to try to organize it in a way that allows you to ask questions. We'll get through this. It doesn't come, even for us that we work with this all the time, and I can understand that it can be somewhat daunting. I'll go through just information based on the law. Your packets includes all the information on all the background that's going to be referred to in this presentation. So please take time to review that. And if you want to write, if you have any questions about what I'm saying, or whatever topic that we're discussing, just write it down. And maybe at the end, we can have that a Q&A. And if I can't answer, we'll get somebody who can. That way we can get through the whole presentation much more efficiently. So we'll start off with just a description of what is state accommodations tax. It is a 2% charge on all accommodations. So any sleeping accommodations that's provided to transients, whether it's a hotel, a short-term rental, an inn, a bed and breakfast, any one of those will have a 2% charge from the state that's collected by the state, and that applies statewide. The Department of Revenue collects this revenue and then distributes it back to the city. Those municipalities that receive more than $50,000 in state ATAX monies must appoint an advisory committee that makes recommendations to council on how to spend that tax revenue. And the city has an ATAX advisory board in place in accordance with state law. You'll hear this term TERC, the Tourism Expenditure Review Committee. That is the state agency that has oversight over the state accommodations tax. And every year, the city has to submit a report to the TERC on how the 65%, which we'll talk about in a minute, 65% of the expenditures from state ATAX were spent, and the 30% that's specific to advertisement and tourism. One of the handouts that we included from the Municipal Association of South Carolina talks about the state accommodations tax and the local accommodations tax. So I wanted to make sure that that we touch on what the difference is. So the local accommodations tax is a tax on accommodations. So same thing, any sleeping accommodations to transients, local communities can impose a tax locally. That aggregate number cannot exceed 3%. Currently, Charleston County has imposed 2% a local accommodations tax. So you have the 2% from state, the 2% local from the county, And then that leaves 1% for the city, that the city imposes on accommodations and then uses according to these guidelines. The revenue from the local accommodations tax, that's all spelled out in Article 5, Section 61500. It spells out what those funds, those local accommodations funds, can be used for. Tourism-related buildings, including coliseums, aquariums, civic centers, tourism-related cultural, recreational, and historic facilities, beach access, beach renourishment, tourism-related water access or land, roads, streets, bridges, advertisement and promotion to tourism development, water and sewer infrastructure. And the city, because of because of the total of revenue that the city receives, is also able to use a portion of the local accommodations tax, which is a 2% and the 1%, Charleston County and the city, for police, fire protection, medical services, and emergency preparedness activities that are associated directly with the tourism-related expenditures that are listed here. We're not going to be talking about the local accommodations tax. We're going to be talking about the state aid tax, but I just wanted to make that distinction so that, that it's as clear as mud, I guess. All right, Chapter 4, Section 6410 spells out how the state aid tax accommodations needs to be allocated. Once we get it, how that has to be distributed. And in your packet, you have that full section of the law to read. Essentially, the first $25,000 of that money is deposited to the city's general fund. The city's general fund funds day-to-day operations, personnel, basically what we call keeping the lights on. So the 25% of that money that we receive from state aid tax goes to the general fund. 30% of those revenues must be used exclusively for tourism advertisement and promotion to develop and increase tourist attendance through the generation of publicity. And that's exactly how it's spelled out in the law. The remaining balance, which is roughly 65% of the state aid tax, may be used for tourism-related expenditures. And the law describes what those tourism-related expenditures are. For example, it includes law enforcement, traffic control, public facilities, special cultural events, street maintenance. In the packet, we also included the section of our budget under state aid tax, so you can see the activities that the city funds with that 65%. Several events, for example, the July 4th fireworks show, because it's certainly impacted by tourism and tourist activity, is funded by state aid tax. We fund several positions in the police, fire department, and public works through state aid tax. The city argues that the activity from those departments is severely impacted in the summer months because of tourism activity, and those expenditures are authorized by the law to be used to be funded in some way or offset by state accommodations tax. So if you have any questions about the budget, I think that'll help clarify what the city uses that 65% for.
So Desiree, just point of clarity, it's 25,000, not 25%.
That's right. It's 25,000, the first 25,000.
So the remaining should be.
There is another portion, a small portion that goes to the general fund too. I didn't want to overcomplicate it, part of the formula.
So that kind of equates to 5%, which leads.
Correct.
To 65.
Yes.
That's right.
It's the 25,000 plus 5%.
Plus
that go to
5%.
That goes to the
To the
general
general
fund.
fund.
And then the other 95 split between the 30 and 65.
That's right. So that's the formula that state law requires we distribute and sort of allocate that money that's received. What are tourism-related expenditures? So Section 6410(4)(b) defines what the tourism-related expenditures are for that 65%. You look at the law, it talks about that remaining balance after you allocate the 30% to tourism advertisement and promotion. You take out the portion that goes to the general fund. What can you do with that 65%? And that's spelled out in this slide here. You can also use portion of the 65% for promotion and advertisement of tourism, promotion of the arts and cultural events, facilities for civic and cultural activities, including the construction and maintenance of access and other nearby roads and utilities for those facilities, law enforcement, fire protection, solid waste collection, public facilities such as restrooms, dressing rooms, parking lots, and parks, tourist shuttle transportation, beach renourishment, and operating visitor information centers. We also wanted to show you, and this may be too small to see on the screen, but it's in your, it should be in your packet. And it shows you the total of revenues that the city received from the state accommodations tax. The total for FY 18, 19, 20, and 21, and year-to-date 2022 is included in that slide. Here you'll see that breakdown that we talked about of how that total number of state accommodations tax has to be allocated. Here you can see how the first 5% plus $25,000 goes to the general fund, then another 5% to the general fund, 65 for the tourism related activities that needs to be allocated to a special fund, and then the 30% for tourism promotion activity. The city for about 20, 25 years has selected this Charleston Visitors Bureau as the direct marketing organization. And every year in the budget, when you look at the state ATAX budget that's in your packet, it shows that line item of the 30% of what we're forecasting we'll receive in total state accommodations tax, and that will go to the Charleston Visitors Bureau for tourism and advertisement.
If I'm reading right, in 2021, we're sending 733,000 to the
Correct.
CDB?
Correct. So you'll see, I'll start from FY 18. The total in FY 18 was 1.8 million. 30% of that total was 556,000. So by state law, that 30% has to go to tourism, advertisement, and promotion. So it's just a formula, whatever that 30% of that total. We have seen a significant increase in accommodations tax in the city for many, many years. It's steadily going up. So obviously as a percentage of that total, that 30% continues to grow.
And that 30%, the city decides that they get that, the CVB,
So
all of it?
correct. Right now, there's only one direct marketing organization that would be eligible to receive that. And that's why the CVB is that regional, you look at it in the law, that regional tourism organization that has an ongoing tourist promotion program that the city has used. So in FY 19, you'll see 1.9 in total state ATAX accommodations that the city has received. 30% of that was roughly 600,000. FY 20, we saw a dip. We all know COVID, the pandemic, people weren't going anywhere. That dipped a little bit. We had a total state ATAX of 1.6. And then FY 21, everything just exploded. Accommodations, hospitality. We've seen a huge increase in those tourism related tax revenues to the city. We've received $2.4 million in total state ATAX. 30% of that was 733. Year to date, the city has received about $1.8 million in state ATAX. 30% of that is the portion that would go for tourism, advertisement, and promotion.
Is that through January or to the?
December, sir.
Through December?
Yes, sir.
These are accommodations tax that are collected upon reservations or at departure?
Well, I guess however people pay. I mean, when you pay your total sort of bill at a hotel or at a short-term rental, that 2% of state accommodations tax is levied on that. Plus the 3% that we talked about that's local that we also receive. So I think that the purpose of this is for you to see that allocation and that distribution of the total of the state ATAX. and that you see that historically we see that number increasing. We don't know how long the sort of the COVID after wave will last. Hopefully it lasts long and tourism activity continues to be strong. Certainly helps the city offset a lot of expenditures and support a lot of projects. But you'll see that it has been certainly stable, growing slightly, but after COVID, we can see a demand for people traveling, and we certainly see that reflected in our tourism-related tax revenue. So a lot of questions have been raised, where are the state accommodations tax on the island coming from? And this slide attempts to show you sort of the distribution on the island where those accommodations tax revenue is being generated from. For FY19, we have updated numbers for FY21. You see a 2.7 total and how that's distributed. So Wild Dunes, IOP hotels, not including Wild Dunes, is about 3%. 29% is online travel companies. All others, so owner manage or owner, basically like Ray, you manage your own property, correct? So you would be in that all other section of owner managed, about 6%. Wild Dunes is about 51%, accounts for about 51% of total of short-term rental licenses used. And all other is 49. That's always a question of, is it inside the, what is the difference between inside the gates and outside the gates? So there are more short-term rental licenses inside the gates than they are outside the gates. All right, let's talk about the 30% of tourism advertisement and promotion. These are specific sections that are verbatim from the law. The section that talks about the 30%, which is part of 3410 of the law, talks about the 30% being used to manage and direct the expenditure of the 30%. And that this goes back, Randy, to your question. Of state ATAX revenue, the city must select one or more organizations, such as a Chamber of Commerce, Visitor and Convention Bureau, or Regional Tourism Commission, which has an existing, ongoing tourist promotion program. If no organization exists, the municipality shall create a nonprofit organization and prove that it can develop an effective tourism promotion program. For about 25 years, the city's direct marketing organization has been the Charleston Area Convention Visitors Bureau. So if another organization exists or the city decides to create one, then that money, that 30% money, could be distributed differently. Right now, there is no other organization, and the city does not have a nonprofit organization that has an ongoing tourism promotion program. If the city can create one and does decide to create one, then that would be a different conversation about how to distribute the 30% that needs to be used specifically for tourism, advertisement, and promotion. Just going back to the first section of that statute that says how to manage and direct that expenditure of the 30%. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here because I don't speak for CVB. They included a couple of presentations that were included in your packet, and it may be that this task force wants to hear directly from them about what they've done for the city and their plans moving forward for the city's tourism and advertisement portion. But in essence, taking from the presentation that they gave to council and to the ATAX committee, their focus has always been to create an overnight visitor, so somebody that comes and stays the night. That is what technically ultimately impacts accommodations tax, because that 2% is only levied on those people that stay overnight on the island in any type of sleeping accommodation. They've been focused on the resort and on short-term rentals. They have proposed moving forward to create an IOP specific website where all island businesses would be highlighted, whether they are separate members of the CVB or not. Their focus has been, and Sam can certainly speak to this, the group sales and business sales, specifically in Wild Dunes, wedding group business, media relations and social media, local guides and campaigns, and visitor services. If y'all have any questions about this, we're going to need to get Helen here. I'm not certainly not going to speak on their behalf. But I did want to include here, again, the presentations they've made and clarify that the city has historically selected the CVB as that regional marketing organization to manage and direct the expenditure of the 30%.
It's nice of them to create a website for us in their presentation.
Desiree,
Yes, ma'am.
just want a clarification here on that too, that, yeah, the website, and Ray will probably speak to this anyway, but the website was, I think, based on my viewing of the ATAX committee meetings, all of them, was an effort by CVB to come back with, to answer some questions and put some ideas out there for the ATAX committee, so that would be more Isle of Palm specific going forward. And we did get a slight glimpse at that the other night at the council meeting when Helen presented that. And she also acknowledged too that our newly formed Chamber of Commerce has been working with her pretty closely on putting some of that together also.
Yes, that's correct. And I'll just piggyback on what you said, during the time, and I'm sure Ray will briefly speak to this, that the ATAX committee started looking into this issue. Concerns were expressed about the CVB's sort of business model and how much money is spent on Isle of Palm specific advertisement. Their model is very much a regional model based with Charleston and Charleston speeches. And there's a belief that they should be doing more advertisement that's just specific to Isle of Palms. When you look at the contributions of the city of Isle of Palms for that 30% compared to other communities in the region that also use the CVB, which includes Sullivan's Island, Mount Pleasant, Charleston County, Kiowa, there seemed to be a disparity, I guess, in how much money the city was providing as part of that 30% and how much content was Isle of Palm specific. So in response to that concern, they have come back with a proposal that talks about more IOP specific advertisement, more the creation of this Isle of Palm specific website that would be available at no cost, no extra cost to any of the businesses, that would take advantage of all the traffic that Explore Charleston already gets, but would be more specific, I guess, to IOP. So those are some of the things that have developed by that conversation of the CVB being responsive to that concern of what is the city getting in return for all that money that you see that percentage growing. One question that was asked by a council member to Ms. Hill on Tuesday was do they have any data that show that a specific advertisement that says come visit Isle of Palms, how does that reflect on somebody coming back and actually spending the night on Isle of Palms? And I don't think she had there's data out there. She couldn't really respond to that in the moment, but she said that they always measure their success when you look at the total accommodations that it's generated in all these communities. You see that total accommodations tax growing. Certainly, they must be doing something right, one would think. Regardless, I think that there is a desire for having some IOP specific metrics to understand how the use of that 30% is directly impacting our coffers. And that's certainly information that this task force can request, and we can have a deeper conversation with the CVB on that. All right, Ray, why don't you just take about 5 minutes to briefly give an overview of what the ATAX committee has done so far and that ultimately yielded the recommendation to city council to consider alternatives.
It might take a little bit more than 5
Sure.
But, well, over the past year, the ATAX committee was given a task by city council to research possible alternatives to the 30% money that is being paid to Charleston Area Visitors Bureau. So we were on a mission to research that and try to understand what options and alternatives would exist. In order to do that, the members of the committee did a lot of research in terms of the laws and guidelines concerning the ATAX money. And I would really recommend that all the members of this committee do the same thing. In it, Desiree gave you the code of laws for that 6-4-510 30 all the way to 35. So that's important. That's really important, but it's hard to kind of read and understand that, at least on the first pass. So what I would suggest is everyone go to the South Carolina Department of Revenue website, or you can Google ruling 98.22. That's a document that the Department of Revenue has published, which is pretty much a Q&A on what would qualify, what would not qualify for the use of the money. And I think that's a helpful document. Secondly, I would go to the Tourism Expenditure Review Committee website. That's the oversight organization for Accommodations Tax. They have a website. They also have a document that is guidelines from their point of view about the tax. I think that is really helpful. So we got grounded on the laws and understanding what we're dealing with. Next thing we did, we invited CVB to come into our meeting. I think it was March, and give us a presentation and tell us what they're doing for Isle of Palms. And we wanted to know how our money was spent, and we wanted to know what are you doing specifically for Isle of Palms. We were told that the money that we give them is commingled with all other sources of revenue. They cannot tell us what our money is spent on. They have visitor centers. They have events at PGA events. They fund all kinds of different things, but they couldn't tell us specifically what our money is used for. Really, their phrase, although I've asked them to stop using it, is a rising tide lifts all boats. So they see themselves as a regional organization, and what they're doing is marketing the Charleston region, and by doing that, all communities would be beneficiary of that activity. Whereas we wanted more specific things to concerning Isle of Palms. So in addition, well, what I would recommend, also highly recommend really, is that everyone here go to the Explore Charleston website. Get familiar with the CVB website, and specifically go to the tabs concerning beaches and go to the tabs concerning Isle of Palms, and you'll get a real good sense of what they're doing for us on the website, on their current website, and also how we're treated relative to the other beach communities of Seabrook, Kiowa, Sullivan's, and Folly. Get your own sense of that. So we researched CVB. We got an understanding of what they're doing and how they do it, although there's a lot of missing information. They're a private company, and they don't give a lot of detailed financials or anything of that sort. So next thing we did, we decided to use Folly Beach as a case study. Folly Beach created their own nonprofit direct marketing organization back around 2008. Charlie McManus was CFO of Folly Beach, and he created the nonprofit, and they wanted a more targeted effort on their accommodations tax money, targeted to Folly Beach, and they felt they weren't getting that from CBB, so they created their own organization. Charlie ran that in the nonprofit DMO. They created a Tourism Visitors Promotion Committee, TVPC, and that group was a independent committee, independent of the city. Let's say it reported into the city, but there wasn't direct activity with the city. But they created their own marketing activity. Charlie ran that for about 6 years, and then he moved on to State Parks Group. And at that point in time, that committee decided to contract with Little Dog Agency in Mount Pleasant to do their advertising and promotion, and that still exists today. That's been running since about 2015. That's been going on. So we went to Folly. We understood how the committee, we met with the city manager and the director of finance. We understood how they communicate and interrelate with the city. I spoke to Charlie McManus, how he organized it, why he did it, and what the process was. Then spoke to Carl Haley, who is the chairman of the TVPC in Folly, and asked him about, are they happy with what they're doing, and how they do what they do, and the whole arrangement. And then I met with Little Dog Agency with their ownership group and found out what they do, how they do it, and they were very open with giving us budgets and so on, all the financial information we could ask for. And it was pretty impressive to see what Folly has done. One example of how they're nimble and able to react is when COVID hit. What they do in their budget, they have allocations for advertising on internet, advertising on TV in other markets like Columbus, Ohio, Nashville, Tennessee, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, that kind of thing. Well, when COVID hit, they said, wait a minute, this is not going to work. No one's flying. So with no point in advertising in some places far away. So they immediately switched their marketing efforts to a 2 tank of gas approach. So they said, okay, we're only going to go as far as 2 tanks of gas would take you out in the perimeter. And they focused on those communities or those regions to market Folly. And they felt that was really successful. So we got a good sense of what Folly has done. And then we came back and we made a recommendation to City Council, and we made a motion that was approved through the committee to recommend to City Council that they consider forming their own nonprofit DMO. That happened in October, and I guess this committee is a result of that. The City Council didn't really deal with our motion other than, I think, the creation of this committee a few months later. There was an election, and there were reasons why the City Council didn't want to deal with it with the lame duck City Council. So that makes sense. Then in November, we passed 2 additional motions. One motion was one motion. CDB, according to state law, you read that's code of laws. One of the requirements of the DMO is to provide a budget for approval to the municipality, and then at the end of the year, a detailed report of expenditures. So we received what CDB calls a budget. They call it a program of work. It's really a list of goals and objectives. It's not a budget, but we were asked to approve that budget. The committee did not approve the budget. We passed a motion, kind of double negative. We passed a motion to not approve the budget. So as it stands, the current arrangement with CVB, We didn't approve the budget, and there is no contract either with CDB. We have no document that says what they're going to do for us, and there's no document that has any metrics associated with the success of their efforts. So we're just giving them the money and saying, we're trusting them that we will benefit, basically, on that. So the two motions, advising to form the DMO, and then secondly, not accepting their budget. The third motion, which is questionable whether it's legal, but I'm not a legal guy, so I don't know the answer to that. But we suggested to City Council that they hold off the money that is currently accruing for that has been designated for CDB until you can get a legal opinion on, can we wait to form our own DMO? And not continue to pay CVB while we're in the formulation stages of determining whether we're going to form a DMO and the time it will take to form the DMO. I believe the city got a legal opinion saying that you can't hold that money back in a separate account. So we're continuing to pay them. But the point is, we're suggesting that that we didn't. And so that's where we are at the moment. One of the things I wanted to mention also, the process associated with forming the DMO, you'd have to make a legal entity, which really is a no-brainer. It takes maybe a day or two. But then, like the city did with the environmental new committee, they have to. Next step would be the formation of the committee. What Folly did is they mirrored the ATAX committee in that you had representatives from hospitality, from lodging, from cultural events, and at large. So you have a cross-functional group, and the city would have to form that committee. So they'd have to go out requesting applications, interview people, select people for that committee, and then ultimately, city council would have to vote on that people. Then once they are it's formed, if they did what Folly did, the first thing they would do would be to contract with an advertising agency, because clearly those people in that committee are not going to be spending money on advertising. They're going to be managing the money, and they would contract with an advertising agency. And the first order of business for the advertising agency would be a standalone IOP website that would represent and benefit all Isle of Palms businesses, whether they be accommodations, whether they be restaurants, whether they be surf lessons, fishing charters, whatever it might be. On that point, I would highly recommend you also go to visitfolly.com, see what they're doing, look at their website, and click all the clicks. They do everything from wedding planning to restaurants, to short-term rentals, to property management, fishing charters, everything. And the whole city benefits from it. And one point also with Folly, no business in Folly Beach pays a penny for that activity. It's free for all businesses. So I suggest you visit CDB website. I suggest you visit Folly website as an example of what can be done. And that's pretty much where we are today.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. And the last recommendation that you talked about, which was for the city to explore what alternatives, if any, are available and possible for the city to pursue, which generated the council's desire to have a task force that's composed of members of tourism impacted businesses, certainly residents, short-term rentals, hotels, because it's a lot of money, certainly a huge decision. And I don't think anybody here wants to see those tourism dollars start going the other way. So I think there's a need for a very thorough, comprehensive assessment of where we are, what can be done, and what success would look like if we want to go in a different direction. Yes, Ray.
Also, I would say that the committee always, still to this day, and always have felt that it's not an all or nothing thing. It's not taking all the money and giving it to CBB, and it's not taking all the money and giving it to some nonprofit DMO. The Charleston Area Visitors Bureau, to the committee's opinion, does some really good things. And the city benefits from those things, and particularly when it comes to the group sales for Wild Dunes and things of that sort. So the committee always thought there's a role for CDB, and there's a potential role for a DMO if it's formed. And there's so much money there, it could be split up and be successful for all.
Thank you, Ray. I think Ray talked about Folly as being one municipality that has done something different, kind of create their own. I believe Sumter is a different community that has done the same. So I won't get into, just for the sake of time, I won't get into that. But certainly there are some examples that could be looked at and see how they operate. And that takes us to the next section is what's next? What kind of information, based on what you've heard today, which hopefully has been very factual based, and certainly from Ray's perspective, from the ATAX committee, what they've done so far, what kind of information, data, research you all think you will need so that we can go back and develop that, prepare that, provide that for your next meeting. Is there a presentation? Do you want to hear for somebody specifically? I think that certainly some of you have already indicated a desire to hear from the CBB directly because that's who we've used for so long. Maybe hear from one of the municipalities that have done something different. So I want you all to start thinking about, from what you've heard, from what you've already been provided, what else do you need so that we can go back and prepare it? The documents that Ray mentioned, the Department of Revenue document that really spells out, what you can use state ATAX for. It's a great document, and I'll make sure you all get it this afternoon. After this meeting, I'll email it to you all so that you have it. You don't have to go searching for it. And that was a great suggestion, Ray. And I hate that I didn't think about that one. But thank you. But yes, that's something that you'll receive so you can take a look at it. And certainly I'll link to the TURC website, the Tourism Expenditure Review Committee, so that you can also kind of poke your head around that as well. Yes,
I have a
sir.
question. Looking at that chart that we were looking at a few minutes ago that was showing the year-to-date numbers for the state accommodations tax and the distribution of funds received.
Yes, sir.
So when we're looking at the general fund, 5% of the general fund, and then 65% to the accommodation tax tourism related, are those monies decided by city council?
Correct.
And they're, according to the law, they have to distribute among those things.
Correct. And
So-
that budget is included in your packet. So you'll see how we distribute that 65% throughout different departments of the city that fit the tourism related
Right, sure. And
expenditures.
so essentially the 30% is something we just send to the CBD in total. Then.
That's correct.
All right. And then finally, looking at the chart again, I'm trying to distinguish what do these other in-between dates signify? June 21.
Those are the
March.
quarterly payments that we receive. We receive
Okay.
4 payments every year. So you'll see each quarterly payment and then the total.
Okay. And again, just questioning year-to-date financial year 22. What does that represent? Is that just December?
That just represents the 2 quarters in 2021. So September and December. Because
Okay.
we run, our fiscal year is July 1st through June 30th.
Okay, now that makes
So
sense.
that's why
Sure.
the first 2 quarters would be the end of the year last year. And
Okay.
then we'll get the next
I
2
see.
quarters in March and June
I see.
of this year
And pretty much that fiscal calendar is true for
for
the entire
everything.
state.
Oh,
Correct.
okay. All right. Good. Thank
So
you.
yeah, just if you, I think it's easier if you focus on the gray column.
Yeah, that's
For
what I was doing.
21, that's a full year. And then as we start receiving quarterly payments from the state, which it's the whole ATAX, then we will continue to update this screen.
I will take it from the Folly Beach office. The Folly Beach, visit folly.com has done extremely well for the businesses, and you see it everywhere. You see it on TV, you see it at, you go to the University of South Carolina football game, there's a big banner there that they have spent their money wisely and properly, and it's a great benefit to the businesses there. Huge, as a matter of fact. And so.
Desiree, quick question.
Sure.
On the 65% that we designated, it also mentions that, if I'm reading that correctly, that of the 65%, that part of that could also be designated for advertising, marketing also. Is that true?
That is correct. That's
So a part of that larger pool of dollars could actually be carved out to do some specific advertising, marketing, like we're talking about for local businesses, local concerns. I don't know what that formula would look like or how many dollars we'd want to devote to that, but that's something worthy of discussion, I think, going forward.
Is that this other chart that we see? I mean, where that money is being distributed?
yes, that budget shows how we spend the 65%. And I think what Councilmember Streetman was asking is, under the tourism related expenditure definition for the use of the 65%, can it be used for advertisement and promotion of tourism? And then you can see here, section 4B, which defines that it includes advertisement and promotion as a valid or legal eligible expenditure of those monies.
And we're not really doing that with that money, are we?
That is correct.
We're using that for police and services for the people that are here.
Correct.
And I brought that up, but I want to qualify it by saying that we are going to deal with the 30% with this group. This is really what we're tasked to do, is the 30% and what we do with that. But this other part of it is sort of intriguing in that you've got that larger pool of dollars that you may have more flexibility that we haven't been using too. So that's something to just consider going forward, and that maybe even be more of a council discussion than it is a discussion with our task force.
I will say that if this committee comes back with a recommendation of for council on that 65 that's specifically for advertisement and promotion, certainly that would be, I'm sure, welcome by
Right.
council
That
as
could
well.
be one of the recommendations.
Yeah. Yes,
Right.
Katrina.
I have a quick question for you. To Ray's point about, possibly finding a balance for, sorry, thank you. To Ray's point about having a balance between the money going to some sort of direct marketing, is it destination or direct marketing organization?
It's a direct marketing. I mean,
Okay.
that's how the law calls it.
Calls it, okay. So having a balance between a DMO or multiple DMOs in the CVB, and then, attesting to the fact that the CVB does do really great work for us regionally. There's no doubt. I think that knowing what the CVB's total budget would be important, just to know what our money's impact is on them. And that might help us in the future, possibly dividing that money, knowing what our impact right now is in the CVB.
I do believe that the long presentation that was included from the CVB, the presentation that they provided to the ATAX committee, I believe it was in November of last year, includes a couple of slides that show their total, the total monies that are received by the different municipalities that partner with them. So you'll see, the portion that they receive from Kiowa, the portion that that they receive from the city, Charleston County, Mount Pleasant, and so on. So we can certainly make that, I believe it's in that PowerPoint presentation, but I'll make a note to make sure that we
On that
include
link,
that.
it shows all of their marketing materials, but I don't think it shows the allocation.
Okay. I know they provided that, so that's not really something that we can make
access.
available.
I
Yeah.
find that to be really relevant to our
Absolutely.
discussions going forward. My second question would be, when would our recommendation go into effect? I know Rusty said that we would have up to 6 months, but say, whenever that period happens where we do make a final decision, when would this actually go into effect?
That's going to be up to city council, depending on what the recommendation is. I don't think we're at that point yet to know, what that timeline would look like.
Just suffice it to say, there would be a lot of discussion in city council, and as we always do, and then wouldn't happen overnight. It would have to be some discussion, a couple of readings or whatever, just depending on what the recommendations are and how we want to approach it from the council standpoint. I think what we envision though is most of us that have talked about it, among the committee meetings that we've had, is that, we want to get some sort of working model in place as quickly as we possibly can. We don't want to drag this out. We don't want it to be a year-long or a year-and-a-half-long process. There's really no reason why we can't act, I think, pretty efficiently on this overall, once we get the recommendations put together.
Ray?
One other point I would suggest you consider, by way of comparison, in fiscal 21, the year ending June 30th, 21, Folly Beach paid CVB $20,000 through their ATAX committee. Sullivan's paid something less than $10,000, and Isle of Palms paid $733,000.
Well, but let's just in full disclosure, Sullivan's Island does not have hotels. Sullivan's Islands does not allow for short-term rentals. So certainly the 2% of accommodations tax that they generate will be much lower than the city, because we do have several hotels and we have no restrictions on short-term rentals. Same thing with Folly. They do not have any restrictions on short-term rentals, but they only have a one small hotel. So because that 30% is a formula of the total, depending on the total of what a community generates from accommodations tax revenue, that 30% will certainly be,
Right, but Folly generates about $400,000 in accommodations tax, and they're budgeted for this year to pay $25,000.
Right. Were you able to see Kiowa's numbers?
No.
Kiowa's we have those numbers and we can provide them. They're very similar to us. Their 30% percentage is almost equal, if not the same, to the city of Isle of Palms. But we can certainly provide that.
My point was meant to be, understand the monies, and then as you do your research and you look at the websites and you see how the different communities are treated, everyone is treated equally, basically. So that was just something to consider, have in the back of your mind while you're going through these websites.
Does Kiowa have a separate committee, or do they do it the same way we do? They just give a lump sum of money to the state?
They operate the same way we do. They have an ATAX advisory committee, just like we do. But their direct marketing organization is the Charleston Visitors Bureau.
So our best example for an alternative is what Folly does.
Correct.
You're saying, Randy, that's very successful.
It is. Just as a matter of record, Kiowa is in itself its own city, its own town, but their business is generated by the resort's marketing budget, which is enormous. And so they basically own CVB with the money they're spending through the CVB as far as advertising dollars from the resort and the amenities there.
Now, do they get money from Isle of Palms that gets thrown into that pot too?
What's that?
Who?
Does Kiowa get any money from, the money that we give, part of it does go to Kiowa and part of it does go to the resort.
Well, I don't know if that would be I don't know if that would be accurate. The money that we provide, that the 30% from the city goes to the CVB. The argument has been made that because the CVB's model is a regional model that focuses on Charleston as the biggest draw of tourism to the area, then, how are they sort of separating the revenue from IOP to all these other communities and be able to answer what they're doing specifically for IOP, which I think it's why certainly one of the next steps should be you all hearing from the CBB directly. Have an opportunity to ask these types of questions directly from them.
Can I add this from 32 years of being in the business of marketing with a major in marketing, but more importantly, just observation of who, what, when, where, and how people come here. When they say Charleston, advertising locally, risk rises all time, whatever that is, moves the tides up, whatever the point is. They do it regardless of whether we spend $1 with them or not, period. Many years ago when we were, and just as an example, we were about to market a condominium at Folly Beach. And it was up to us as a company to advise the developer how to market the property. We don't want to call it Folly Beach condominiums. Nobody knows who Folly Beach is. We wanted to call it something that was recognizable nationally. So we called it Charleston Oceanfront Villas. It couldn't be more simple, and it worked like a charm. Charleston's always going to attract. If you look at the number one name when people think of South Carolina tourism, can anybody guess? It's Myrtle Beach. Number 2 is Charleston. Isle of Palms doesn't even rank in the top 5, and neither does Folly. So that's why Folly took it upon themselves to do that. Kiowa is, I think, Hilton Head is number 3, and Kiowa is number 4.
But isn't Wild Dunes though rated in there as a separate entity
Yeah,
rather than
Yeah.
lumping
But-
it with Isle of Palms?
it's separate altogether, and it's still on the top, not in the top 5.
Oh,
I will, just for
Name recognition. That's what.
for background, a couple of years ago, we had a very similar conversation with the former ATAX committee and specifically council about this general belief that the city was pretty much full in the summer. I'm not saying that this is my opinion, but kind of hearing what people were saying. We don't need more advertisement in the summer. We're full. We don't have a whole lot of space. And the request was made to the CBB, can you focus your advertisement for Isle of Palms for the off season? Maybe group sales, group business, they come, they spend a lot of money in the hotel and in our businesses. And usually these folks don't all come with a car. If they're flying from a different place, they may be renting or Ubering. So it's a sort of a low impact to the community from that perspective. And so we have communicated to the CBB, and they understand that that we may be more interested in focusing on the shoulder season. We used to call it the secret, we call it the secret season. But we've also heard from folks on the other side that say, well, we don't want to be busy in the off season, in the shoulders. We survive the summer. We get it. We live in a beach community. We don't want the summer activity to be year round on the island. So I think that this task force needs to balance that. How much is too much advertisement? Where do we want the advertisement to be focused on? Again, what does success look like? Is it having the same type of activity in the summer year round? Is it reducing the activity in the summer because we're already full? Those are all conversations that will impact ultimately what the program of work or where the advertisement goes and where the promotion focuses on. I have no reason, I don't understand why the presentation is not showing up, but the last slide was just next steps, what's next, what kind of information. I've made some notes based on the conversation y'all have. It's fine, Douglas.
Desiree, can I make one comment?
Sure.
In regards to what you just said? I mean, I definitely we're full during the summer. We all know that. I mean, all of us who either work here, live here, or play here. But during the shoulder season, what would be good to see is the people that do come here are attracted here and they spend more. They spend more lodging, stay longer or whatever, generate more ATAX. They frequent our restaurants, our stores. I mean, I think Brett would tell you that during the shoulder season, he could appreciate more business at his 4 restaurants. And I'm sure Trina would say the same thing about the chair and umbrella rentals. I don't know how many people sit on the beach in January, None. She said, but anyway, that would be our goal is to really, it's not so much to me a numbers game of pulling more people in here that much, other than having people to get here and spend more and, so that we can still maintain some good quality of life around here during that season.
One other comment, I was thinking about the resort, Charleston's Island Resort. I was thinking about our slogan, nobody knows the Charleston coast better. I mean, you can do Isle of Palms advertising by attaching the name. And that would be up to whoever committee we decided to be, as far as just marketing per se. So it's, to me, I think just like say it out loud. This is so much money. If you don't want more people here, then just take the 700,000 and cut the taxes for the city. But this is about accommodation, raising money to take care of our services. And that's the most important.
And we're bound by law to take that 733,000.
Yeah.
Give it to an agency or agencies.
Nobody's coming here in January. Let's go spend money in January.
I think to the point,
September, and October.
to Rusty's point, I think he made a really good point in talking about, quality maybe versus quantity with visitors. And, to me, that sparks some sort of branding initiative where we should be branding for a more luxurious stay, which I think we already are positioned to do so. And I think that's a really good point that you made in the off season, because that's going to have less impact, more dollars.
Can the Chamber of Commerce, this new committee, can that be looked on as a committee or an organization that could in fact be ready right away? So we wouldn't have to wait for another committee to be formed. Can we move quicker because we already have a Chamber of Commerce to actually be able to do something?
Well, when you look at the section of the law that talks about the 30%, it says to manage and direct the expenditure of the 30% state ATAX revenue, the city must select one or more organizations such as Chamber of Commerce, Visitor and Convention Bureau, and Regional Tourism Commission, which has an existing ongoing tourist promotion program. If it doesn't, I think the following sentence after that talks about you have to show that you can develop an ongoing tourism promotion program. But until the creation of this chamber, nothing other than the CVB existed. So according to state law, that is the direct marketing organization in existence that then would need to be managing and directing the expenditure of those funds.
May I real quickly interject? Curtis, it's I think this one kind of, Curtis, I think it's a good point. We are officially a 501c6, which would put us in a qualification standpoint. We are realizing right now our vision. Yesterday, we had a 4.5-hour meeting, a board meeting that was all visionary based. We're looking at our mission, and it's very obvious that our businesses all exist in a tourism economy. That said, there is going to be a visitor attraction aspect, and also focusing on a balance with our tourism and our community, because a lot of us are residents as well. Short answer to your question, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that we are qualified by state law to receive funds. And it is a goal of ours to have a branding for the Isle of Palms that encompasses those things I talked about. And it's really funny that you spend your time in Aspen. Aspen has a really interesting Chamber of Commerce. It's like a Chamber of Commerce hybrid with a DMO. And they receive ATAX funding. I don't know how Colorado law works, but it is in Colorado. Yeah. And, okay. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I got little monkeys keeping me up. But they do a really, really interesting program with Aspen and how they use how they function their chamber, because it's such a tourism-based economy, similar to ours, maybe a little more, but it would be interesting to put that on your notes to just explore a little bit.
So just a question on that. It does sound, or it appears to read that the organization has to exist first. So I mean, it sounds like there's this talk of creating a DMO. And Ray, I don't know if that came out in the discussions with Folly, but it sounds like the law wouldn't allow this group to create a DMO. It would have to be identifying an existing Chamber of Commerce, Visitors Bureau, and only if no organization exists, then can you create. Is that
Well,
your
but if you-
understanding?
If you continue to read the law,
That same section?
well, I'll read the whole sentence. To be eligible for selection, the organization must be organized as a nonprofit organization and shall demonstrate to the municipality or county that has an existing ongoing tourism promotion program, or that it can develop an effective tourism promotion program. So it's or that it can develop an effective tourism promotion program. And that is what Folly did. They went to Turk with their plan. This is how we're going to do it, and this is what we're going to do. And that was approved.
And that's probably one of the items that we need to get clarified.
Yes, because there's certainly several opinions out there about the interpretation of this law, and this has never been challenged. Certainly Folly and other communities have done it, but this would be to me, an action from legal. Can the city create one if one exists? What would be the criteria to determine that one does not exist that meets our needs, that would then allow the city to create a specific, a separate organization?
So you're saying the Chamber of Commerce may or may not be eligible for that because it's so current?
No, I would say that the chamber, this is my non-legal interpretation, that the chamber would have to demonstrate the ability to either create or to demonstrate that it has an ongoing tourism promotion program or has the ability to develop one. Because the Chamber of Commerce is listed on that as an eligible organization. I guess the question remains is if let's say the Chamber of Commerce develops an ongoing organization, tourism promotion program, and the CVB exists, there's two in existence, or maybe one, let's forget about the chamber for a minute. There's one in existence. Can the city still create its own separately when one exists? That's, I think, that the difference of interpretations that's out there that we would need to get some clarity on. Certainly other communities have done it, but it's never been challenged, and it's, to me, not enough assurance to move forward in a specific direction without any guidance on whether it's proper to do so or not.
Desiree, as a task force, this being a public meeting, if we sought a legal opinion, we would be bound to go into executive session on that, wouldn't we?
Yes, it would fall under the same
Same.
criteria for executive session of receiving legal advice.
Well, I think as far as, I mean, I know what we're looking at, what's next, and what we need to look at. We've already brought up what CVB, Folly, maybe some other models we look at. Legal certainly ought to be a part of that. I don't know, others have other ideas. I mean, what?
Yeah, what other information, data, presentations, who do you want to hear from? I'm trying to put together that so that we can prepare for your next meeting, and be as efficient as we can.
I've got a question. If the Chamber of Commerce, the newly formed one, gets the money, can we also still give part of the money to the CVB, or does the council have to split it equally, or is that a decision y'all can make?
So the law doesn't say how you can distribute that money, if you have more than one organization. So that'll be discussion points by city council of if there are two, how to best distribute that money based on, again, what you all want to, what city council wants to see how, that money being spent. So the law essentially doesn't say that if you have two, you have to do 50-50 or.
Folly's not.
So they get it all gets it all, and then they send to CBB the 10,000.
They give a little bit to CVB. They spend a lot on their own market.
Gotcha.
What Folly does is that they give $20,000 to $25,000 to CVB. But what they also do with CVB is they pay for individual advertisement placement. They pay an additional, this year, they're going to pay an additional $22,000, and they're putting a full page ad in the CVB visitors guide, and a full page ad in the CVB wedding guide. So again, you go into those publications and you'll see Visit Folly and the wedding thing and all that. So they pay beyond their $25,000, they pay another 22 to do that specific advertising. And we brought that up, the ATAX committee brought that up to CVB. We're paying all this money and we don't get anything in the wedding guide. We don't get anything in the visitors guide. And they said, oh, well, we'll do that for you. So maybe they will, maybe they won't, but
I think they have to, you can tell me, Sam, but I believe you have to bid on those pages. Or used to, I don't know, do you still?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, it's expensive. Take my word for it, it's very expensive. In addition to get placement in the CVB's website and their magazine, you have to bid on it against Kiowa and whoever else wants to raise the stakes, and it's extremely expensive.
On the Isle of Palms, out in the major area, weddings are really not allowed. You're limited to maybe 40 people, and that's in our big house. And that's it. Most of the weddings are in Wild Dunes. And so Wild Dunes would probably benefit from a page that said weddings are invited. But I don't think on Isle of Palms in general, it's not even available. We don't want weddings.
Unless you have a small wedding.
Well, but how do you define a small wedding?
20 people.
Yeah, and most people, I mean, they'll write us, we want a wedding at your house. We say, how many people? Oh, it's a small wedding, 125 people. And then we write back and say, well, the Isle of Palms is very strict. The most they'll allow, I think that's still the rule, is 40. And that has to include the caterers, anybody that's working for the wedding. And so that eliminates wedding. So I don't think the island wants weddings. And they're a big problem years ago. That's one reason that all these rules came out limiting the amount of people that could stay at houses. That just got totally out of control.
There are still a number of small weddings on the beach, wedding beach parties that you see occasionally. Living beside a house that at one time was a short-term rental, now it's not. Thankfully, it's a second home. It's not the wedding so much, it's bothersome, it's the after party.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Which can go on forever.
Send them to the Windjammer.
Right, exactly.
So back to, again, next steps, what are our assignments? What do you all need from us? And if we can talk about when we can have our next meeting. And we'll prepare that agenda, share it with all of you. Do you all want to hear from the CVB first and then have maybe an example from Folly or another community that has done this? Any thoughts?
What about a presentation by the chamber? What they would like to do.
I think that would be lovely to give an update on where we are. We're moving fast, really fast. I mean, we're cranking out 4-hour sessions and it's amazing. I would love to update the committee on that. I'd also love to see the CVB here with their presentation and a Q&A. We as a chamber are working very closely with the CVB. And what they do for the region of Charleston is incredible. But that isn't to say that I think we also need our own focused branding, like Ray had suggested with Folly. But yes, I would love to. That would be an opportunity.
Sarah?
I'd also really like to see us examine the administrative burden of these different options as well, especially if we're considering creating our own DMO versus perhaps utilizing the Isle of Palms Chamber versus what the administrative burden is with the CBB. I think that's something that we really have to factor into our final decision, because there is a cost there.
And I think too, I know that a lot that people focus on that big number, right? And that big number goes to the CVB right now. Can we split it different ways? Can we use it for other things? I think that that's pretty clear for our perspective that the law, it's just specific that it must be used exclusively for advertisement and promotion for the development of tourism. I think that the conversation would be better if you focus on goals. What is the goal of the tourism advertisement and promotion piece? And can the city achieve that goal with the current structure with the CBB? Or do we think we can do better or different through another structure? Before thinking of reinventing the whole wheel from the very beginning, first, I think we need to articulate, or this task force needs to articulate, what does success look like? What do we want that we're not getting today? Can we get there with our current structure? If not, what are our options? I think that would help kind of get the conversation a little bit organized, so that we don't put the cart or the horse before the cart before the horse. I don't know how. That may be helpful. All right, any ideas on when our next meeting could be?
Are we looking monthly? Are we looking bi-weekly, weekly?
Well, I know that the council has given 6 months of sort of a deadline for the work of this task force. So I know we want to be very respectful. It's, it's already an hour and a half in. You all have lives and jobs and kids and families. So we want to be respectful of that, certainly.
6 months from now, we'll be in the sort of the end of summer. And Rusty said something that I thought was relevant. We can get this done a lot faster than 6 months. And when you get into June, July, and August, you're going to see half the people here that we normally see. Take it from a guy that's got employees. I think we should set a goal of trying to get this done in the next 90 days.
I think you're right. My initial vision of this, when I was discussing it with Desiree, one of her meetings where we were just thinking about possible meeting times and dates, that sort of thing. If you all could work it into your schedule, I'd like for us to meet every couple of weeks. I think so. Instead of having a monthly meeting, let's have every 2 weeks, let's have a meeting, at least initially. If we see we're making the kind of progress we need to make, maybe we do roll it back to once a month. But if we're looking at a 3 to 4 month timeline to do this right, to feel good about the recommendations, that's perfect as far as I'm concerned.
So how about 2 weeks from today? That would be March the 10th.
I cannot make it on the March 10th.
Okay.
It's the only day in the next little while.
How about the 9th, Wednesday, the 9th? We have court that afternoon. So I think if we continue to follow the 9 o'clock, hopefully that works. Mornings works best for everyone. What about that Wednesday, March 9th at 9?
Do we all need to be?
I think
We're gonna be in
ideally,
Colorado.
okay.
You won't be here in the summer. That's what I'm trying to.
No,
Right,
no,
right,
we're
right.
gone into
Right.
May through middle of September.
Well, we can, these meetings are being live streamed. So you can see the meeting in real time, or you can watch the meeting after the meeting. So if you can't make it, certainly there are ways for you to still be connected and kind of hear what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to
Right. And you could always
You can't
provide feedback too,
base
Chris.
the whole meeting on one guy not being able to make it.
Right, right.
Well, that's why, thanks to technology, you can still be connected in some way.
Well, the main thing we do want to have is a quorum anyway. I mean, we've got 9 members, counting me, and
Other than Curtis, does anybody object to Wednesday tonight?
All right,
No.
so we'll plan
go.
on the March the 9th at 9 a.m. I'll work with Rusty on the agenda. based on the feedback provided today and the folks that you want to hear from. Unless, yes, Ray?
I was just gonna throw out the idea, in addition to Helen, maybe not the same meeting, but maybe the following meeting, have call Haley, the chairman of the Folly Beach TVPC.
yeah.
And maybe have him bring along Soraya McKay, if that's appropriate. I mean, she owns the advertising agency that's doing all of the work, and they can sort of like tag team us with the presentation. So that way you see the CVB approach and how they're doing and what they do and successes and all. And then you also see a different example of how it can be done from Folly.
Absolutely.
Is that the
Agree.
Little Dog Agency?
Little Dog agency.
Yeah, I have that written down.
agencies that I could recommend that we found very successful for our company.
Sure, sure.
All right. I think you already have my contact information. If you think of anything between now and then, any report, anything that you can think about that you need, please let me know and we'll facilitate that
And
before the next
Let me
meeting.
also mention too, that probably, kind of like the way we like to do things around here. If you do have a question or input, should it go to you, Desiree?
Yes,
Okay, so direct it to Desiree. She'll make sure all of us get copied of whatever is relevant at that time. So that's pretty much the way we do things to avoid quorums with our city council too. So it's kind of, direct to her and she gets it out to the people that need to have it. So.
well, and anything if Brett, you request a report, I'm gonna make sure that you all receive the same thing that
Right.
Brett gets. So everybody will be able to see the same information,
All full disclosure.
whether you want it or not.
Right. All full disclosure here.
All right, well, thank you so much. I think this has been great. Again, we are very appreciative of your time and your commitment to helping city council make the best decision moving forward. And yeah, just we'll keep chugging along and I'll see you all at that